Hey internet buddies, it's time again for a new round of the Possum Head Chronicles, videos about preparing animal remains at home for educational and display purposes. It's been a long while since we did one of these, and the animal parts we'll be working with in this series have been sitting in the chest freezer pretty much that whole time. It's some duck pieces, a couple heads, and a couple feet. The heads we'll try to clean down to the skull, and the feet, I don't know what we're gonna do with those. Maybe nothing. Maybe we can think of something. They're really cool looking dinosaur duck feet. The first step is going to be to just strip off the feathers and skin and as much meat as possible, a process we may not show very much of on camera because it's always the grossest part of these projects, and that's saying something. But before we can start on that, the parts need to thaw a bit. So into the fridge they will go, right next to food, but double bagged to save everyone some unpleasantness, at least until next time on the Possum Head Chronicles.
I don't know what I expected.
Welcome to 2016, e-pals, and to a brand new installment of the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3. When last we saw our duck heads, we had left them in the fridge to thaw. Now they're nice and pliant, as well as super nasty smelling. They were probably in there too long. The idea today is to prep them for soaking by stripping off whatever feathers and skin and meat we can before we put them in water to sort of dissolve the rest of the soft tissue off. It's a little bit delicate because there's not a ton of flesh on the head, which I guess is why you never hear about fine restaurants serving duck cheeks. Also, the bones are fairly fragile, and I don't want to bust them, either with the knife or just by wrenching on them as I pull the meat off. So I'm going to try to err on the side of doing too little meat removal. It's all going to come off in the soak anyway, probably, right? It's stinky though, totally unpleasant. Here's one kind of weird hunk of meat, the tongue. Yuck. So here you see this is about as clean as I'm gonna get it at this stage, which is hopefully clean enough. On to skull number 2. I do believe this one's tongue is even weirder. So here they both are, ready for immersion in the maceration bath, which is really just water. But maybe we could add some borax next time we work on them. Spoiler alert for future episodes, sorry. Into the skull soaking shed they go, hopefully not to freeze solid overnight. That probably wouldn't be helpful. It might behoove us to watch the forecast and keep an eye on the temperature, but then again, it's probably not like I'm gonna move a jar of duck heads indoors. So behoovement be darned. We'll just see what happens. Next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Buenos videos, internet amigos. It's time for an all-new installment of the Possum Head Chronicles video series about cleaning animal bones at home for learning and display. It gets kinda gross this time, even by PHC standards, so be forewarned and don't watch if you don't like gross stuff. We begin by retrieving the jar containing our duck heads from the shed where they've been soaking for the past several days. Looks like duck soup. Take one taste of this, you'll duck soup for the rest of your life. I'm digging a very shallow hole for the water and the flesh bits so I can cover them up after and minimize the stinkiness like a house cat fastidious in its toilet routine. Parts of the meat are clearly loosening, including the eyeballs, so we can take them out. This is pretty nasty, but you have to admit, I warned you. With the eyeballs removed, the heads are definitely looking more like skulls. This leathery skin on the beak is coming off too. Back into the soaking jar they go. We'll refill it with clean water, stick them back in the shed, and I don't know about you, but personally I feel like washing my hands. Until next time, it's the Possum Head Chronicles. Welcome back, weirdos, for more of the revolting business of skull cleaning. It's the Chronicles of Possum Heads, Series 3, Duck Heads. Ooh, they're looking nasty. I'm gonna call these two Mulder and Scully. Get it? By now you know the routine. We'll take the skulls out of their maceration bath and try to peel off whatever bits of meat that have loosened. So hey, let's talk about the bills. I read that when cleaning other birds' skulls, you can sometimes peel off the beak sheet, store it separately while you clean, degrease, and bleach the bone, then reapply it when you're finished. But I gather duck bills are different. They're covered in this leathery skin, which as you can see here, is totes coming off our specimens. It would be nice if we could preserve this skin on the skull because it's colorful and cool looking, but check out this, which I learned from skullsite.com. It said you can preserve this skin on the skull, but only by rigging the skull in its soaking bath to sort of float in just such a way that the beak itself is not submerged. And quote,
A bit of luck is needed to get a good result with this method. The bill skins get damaged often anyway. Also, the peroxide will creep up, causing discoloration of the basal part of the bill. Furthermore, the skull will smell bad for a long time. That from skullsite.com. So we aren't doing that. I've seen some people paint their duck skulls to try and recreate some of the beauty of the original bill, but we're not doing that either. Here's something, if you watch closely, you can see where, while I'm trying to pry out one of this head's eyes, I get squirted with eyeball juice. That's unpleasant. Okay, this time, before we return them to their soaking jar, we're adding a little borax. Product placement about which I'm sure the good people at Borax are just thrilled. I heard the enzymes in this stuff speed the breakdown of the meat, or something. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Well, 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 if it isn't the old Possum Head Chronicles again. When last we saw our duck skulls, they were soaking in water and borax. Let's have a look at what, if any, progress they've made. So, in my opinionation, that borax seemed to help. Or maybe we've just reached a point in the soaking where more of the meat is ready to come off. In any case, they're looking much more like skulls and less like duck heads every time we check on them. The eye socket on this one is busted, which I might have done while prying off the meat, or it could have happened when the duck met its end, which I don't know if we've explicitly talked about in this, but it was a violent end? I don't know. Either way, I'm trying to be careful because the bones are pretty fragile. So this episode turns out pretty much like last episode, and I have a feeling next episode is likely to be kind of like this too. We'll see, but now, as at the end of any sitcom, everything must be returned to the state in which it was found at the beginning. Heads back in the jar. Add some borax, because I think it was helpful, although that's probably too much, oh well. Add water, and stick the jar back in the shed for another period of maceration. I bet you can't wait to see what'll happen next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. It's an all-new Possum Head Chronicles, this time with all-new rubber gloves. Not rubber, really. Vinyl, I think. Doesn't matter. Here come our duck skulls from out of the shed where they've been soaking and thrust once more into the unforgiving light of day. This one's getting pretty clean, to the point where it's now hard to tell what's bone and what's little bits of ligament or tendon or whatever. The whole thing flexes in my hand, which makes me wonder if I didn't crack some piece I shouldn't have. It might be time to look at a book of duck skull anatomy and see if that helps. Here's the other one. I was like, ew, what's all this weird grit all over it? But then I remembered it's some of the undissolved powdered detergent from last time. Still pretty yucky. This one still has a fair amount of skin and meat on it. Thinking maybe next time it might be good to bring some scraping tools or something, because what comes off under my fingers is just like meat slime. Pretty gross. Back into a fresh jar of water for these skulls and onto the soaking shelf to macerate some more until next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Greetings, e-buds. It's time for another installment of the Possum Head Chronicles video series about cleaning duck skulls. It's raining, which is fine for duck skull cleaning, but not great for making videos of it. That's why I rigged up this ingenious rainproof camera rig. Check it out. Picture in picture, trippy. The skulls have been soaking since we last looked in on them, and by now you probably know the routine. We take them out of their maceration bath, we peel off whatever meat has softened enough to peel off, we put them back in their jar. The end. Lather, rinse, repeat. So just to inject a little variety here, I thought this time I might reply to one of the comments posted in a recent Possum Head Chronicles video forum thread. Let's see, what have we got? Here we go. Medj says, yawn, wake me up when he totally botches this one too. Okay, so that's not supportive at all, and I guess that's why I haven't replied to comments before. Anyway, back in their soaking jar, the duck skulls go. We'll toss a little borax in there too, and just wait to see what happens next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Spoiler alert, same thing as this time again, I bet. Howdy, online buds! It's time for another installment of the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3 Duck Skulls Edition. It's been a long time since we looked in on these macerating noggins, and in the meanwhile, it got all springtimey on us. What a beautiful time of year it is for cleaning animal skulls or partaking of any other pastime practiced outside. These skulls are looking very clean. Just a few remaining holdout flesh globs which adhere with the stubbornness of an unblowable deep nostril booger. I'm using an old dental surplus tartar scraper thing to try to pry some of this goop loose. Sorta works. One more soak will probably do it for these skulls, and then we can move on to the final degreasing and bleaching steps. You know, we started this project with intact duck heads, and now we're tantalizingly close to having attractively clean skulls. It's a real bonanza! Bonanza! I don't know why I felt compelled to try to make that into a joke. It doesn't work. Oh well, maybe I'll do better next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Word up, cyber homies. It's time for another installment of the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3 Duck Skulls Edition. You down with PHC? Back to the bone shed we go to retrieve our duck skulls from their final soak before degreasing. There's still a little bit of goopy meat sticking to them in spots, so we'll try to clean all those nasty little bits off before they proceed to the next stage, which looks a lot like the previous stage. Except instead of soaking in just plain water, now they're soaking in an ammonia solution. I've seen a range of recommendations as to the best concentration of ammonia to use, but what they all seem to have in common is that they're pretty weak. Like, I think I used 1 part ammonia to 8 parts water, or something in that ballpark. You can count the cups here. But plenty of experts say to go more diluted than that. So are we worried that our ammonia solution is too strong? Well, what's the worst that can happen? We ruin this project and have to throw it away. It's duck bones, which most people would probably wonder why we haven't thrown away already. Back into the shed they go, hopefully to emerge degreased and ready for bleaching next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Hey cutie babies, it's time for another installment of the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3, in which we are cleaning, degreasing, and bleaching duck skulls. You may remember that last time we left them in an ammonia solution for degreasing. And again, you may not. It's not like there's going to be a quiz. Bad news though, friends, this last soak has loosened some more soft tissue. It's actually kind of good news, but the bad news part of it is that I thought we would be moving to the bleaching stage today, and instead, I think we want to do another round of degreasing. You like my new gloves? I got a new box of latex gloves. Anyway, maybe more little rancid meat bits are yet to come off these skulls, but even if not, they just weren't as clean as I thought they were last time. So back in their jar they go, another dash of ammonia, fill the rest of the way with water, and hopefully after another round in the ammonia bath, they'll at last be ready for whitening next time on the Possum Head Chronicle. Sunshiny summertime greetings, you weirdos. It's time again to contend with the inevitability of death via the Possum Head Chronicles. Memento mori, y'all. Last time, you will probably remember, because who could forget, we stuck our duck skulls in a second, unscheduled degreasing ammonia solution bath, because the Possum Head Chronicles is like that, with its many unexpected plot twists. Strain 'em and drain 'em, boys. Let's see how degreased these dead ducks is. Answer? Reasonably degreased. There's still some stubborn soft tissue clinging to the bone, but honestly, I have no more patience for trying to soak the final little shreds off. We'll use our trusty dental tools to get the skulls as clean as possible and proceed to the next step. If we need to, we'll scratch off the last little flecks of meat after everything's clean and dry. The next step is bleaching, for which I'm using regular old hydrogen peroxide. Some sources recommend cutting this to a 50% solution. I'm pouring it in straight. These skulls are fairly white already. Hopefully this will get them even more so. Oh, they're gonna be dazzling. Back into the bone-soaking shed they go for retrieval next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Good morning, Starshines. The Possum Head Chronicles video series says hello. When last we saw our duck skulls, they were going into a hydrogen peroxide bath for brightening. And it worked. Check them out now. They're whiter than Eddie Redmayne's thighs at Christmas time. Bleaching is my favorite step every time we do a project like this. It's the moment the skulls go from, ew, that's part of a dead thing, to, okay, I can see how maybe you would have that in your house. I wouldn't have it in my house. But to each his own. We're gonna put these in the sun to dry for a little while, and then it'll be time to seal them and figure out how best to display them. We're gonna do that next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. What's up, Friendsters? It's the Possum Head Chronicles. As you may recall, our duck skulls are cleaned, degreased, and bleached. It's time to figure out how to display them. I'm tracing the vague shape of a display plaque around this one just to get the dimensions roughly appropriate for the size of the skull. Next, I draw up a more geometrically regular version of that shape in Illustrator so it's all symmetrical and the lines are straight and whatever. When it's ready, we'll print that image, like on paper. When's the last time you got to use a printer? Very retro. And cut it out for use as a template in transferring the shape to a piece of wood. Looking good. Now I'm tracing the shape onto a piece of scrap wood. I'm going to try to distress the plaque after it's cut out, so it's okay if the pattern doesn't transfer with absolute perfect fidelity. Hooray, time to cut it out. People who are good with jigsaws probably know how to avoid this, but the torque on the blade as I tried to cut the curved sections flexed it, resulting in a cut that is not perpendicular to the plane of the surface of the thing. I'm not explaining it well, but maybe you can see it here. It's probably not a big deal, but it bothered me, and the way I fixed it was just by tracing and cutting out new shapes from a thinner board, a step I did not get on camera. Now, I want to make them look a little bit old and janky, so first, with a propane torch, I singed the wood. More than singe, really. Burnt it. This is the funnest part of the whole project yet, and also way more telegenic than the slow process of meat decaying in water. Next, I take a wire brush to the burnt plaques, which sort of raises the grain of the wood and gives it a neat, weathered texture. So much more has happened already in this episode than in almost any other Possum Head Chronicles video to date, so let's stop here and we'll wait to stain these pieces until next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Word up, animal remains enthusiasts, it's the penultimate episode of the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3. We are so close to the end of this project you can almost smell it, and might I say, the end of this project smells considerably better than every step leading up to it. But speaking of stinky steps, the next thing we've got to do is stain our plaques. It takes 2 coats with 6 hours or so in between them. Staining is a pain, but it does look nice. Here they are after the first coat. Meanwhile, I'm sealing the skulls with a coat of Mod Podge, which is basically like a clear drying glue people use for decoupage, or as it's sometimes called for laughs, decoupage. Try that wacky pronunciation out at your next crafting bee. You'll be a huge hit. I've never bothered with this sealing step before, and I guess I can see how it might help protect the real little bones in a larger skull, or help keep it clean, but it seems unnecessary on these ducks. Then again, what about this project has risen to the level of necessary, really? Now we wait for everything to dry and we'll put it all together. Let's milk that perfunctory final step for one more video, which we'll see next time on the Possum Head Chronicles. Welcome back, my friends, to the video series you thought might never end, the Possum Head Chronicles Series 3. Our duck skulls are almost prepped for display. We'll staple a little wire to the back of the plaques we made so they can be readily hung in a place of honor, like a dark corner of the basement bar where no one ever goes. Now we affix the skulls to the plaques with hot glue, putting just a couple dabs on the base of each skull and another glob under the bill. It takes a very steady hand, and that's it. They look pretty good in my humble house of pancakes. And so this one joins the collection you may recognize from previous Possum Head Chronicles series. Thanks for coming along with me on this tedious journey. We learned, we laughed, we accidentally splashed ourselves with some of the grossest smelling stuff you'd ever hope to get on your skin and clothes. It was fun! I wonder what varmint we'll transform into home decor next time in Series 4 of the Possum Head Chronicles!